everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gabo Ailstock and I am from UpDog, the UAV for Payload Delivery Working Group. And today we are going to be talking about the Medical Drone Delivery Database. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. So today, like I mentioned, I'm your host, Gabo Ailstock from UpDog, and I also have my co-host, Susie Trobe from Village Reach. Susie, do you want to come off mute and say hi for a moment?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. So we've got a short webinar today, only 30 minutes. We'll do about 20 minutes of our introduction to the MD3, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion and questions at the end. The webinar is being recorded right now. And if you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat feature while we're going, but we will have time for question and answer at the end. And if you could please stay muted, but when we do get to the question and answer, if you want to raise your hand and unmute yourself, you can feel free. So I'll get started by just doing a quick introduction to the UAV for Payload Delivery Working Group for those who might not be members who are joining us today. So UpDog, or that's short for the UAV for Payload Delivery Working Group, is a global network of over 300 stakeholders who are interested in using drones within health systems. Our goal is to provide value for our members with a venue to share information, experience, and expertise to accelerate the integration of drones into health systems. So we do this through facilitating knowledge sharing, through our webinars like today, through our newsletters and our UpDog or our online resource library, also through partner coordination and connecting members for collaborations, as well as through in-person and online networking events. And then finally, through the creation of a medical drone operations repository, which is called the Medical Drone Delivery Database, which I'm here to share with all of you today. So the health and development sector really has been the global pace setter when it comes to using drones for payload delivery. We've seen tremendous progress in BB loss operations through these early adopters in places like Rwanda or Malawi or Switzerland. But despite all of this progress, very little has been publicly shared on the efficacy of these large and small scale operations around the globe. And the sector has really been looking to these early adopters to learn from their experiences. But the lack of transparency about the success and the failures of their operations has hindered our ability to learn from their valuable experience. And on top of that, very little evidence has been publicly shared on the impact of this technology on supply chain or health outcomes in comparison to the status quo or to land-based transportation. So not surprisingly, donors and governments and others with decision-making power on when and where to use drones have been a little bit reluctant to fund operations and make these decisions without some of this data. So in response to this, UpDog, with funding from the Interagency Supply Group UAS coordinating body, which is a coalition of donors around the world who are interested in using UAVs in health systems, and in partnership with Village Reach, we created the Medical Drone Delivery Database, and the MD3 for short. And the MD3 is a user-generated database which consolidates flight operations data and learnings from drones for health operations around the world in a free-to-access platform housed on updog.org. We created the MD3 with the goal of breaking down these transparency barriers by incentivizing actors within the space to share their results and to share their learnings so that governments and regulators and investors can make more informed decisions on the future of drone operations. So we created the Medical Drone Delivery Database with a few key stakeholders in mind who really are, like I said, are these kind of decision-making holders or decision-making people. So for governments, such as the Ministry of Health, let's say, the MD3 can help them understand the proven capabilities and limitations of drone technology, along with the potential benefits of drone transportation, and also to help them connect with potential collaborators or partners. For donors, we see the value is that it helps them contextualize the results of their grantees to help them guide future funding decisions. For regulators, we believe that the MD3 can give them insight into the efficacy of drone operations around the world to help inform future operations in their own environments. And then finally, for drone operators and implementers, they can promote their work and find future clients or partners or collaborators, and they can learn from the work that others have already done to apply it to their future operations. So the data in the MD3 is categorized into 4 different phases of work, which are an agreed upon classification within the Drones for Health sector to identify the maturity of operations. And we did this because you would expect to see different results depending on the maturity and the scope of these operations. So we have the 4 phases here, and for phase 0, for example, this technology demonstration project, there might be only flights happening for 1 day, let's say, in a very limited scope, maybe even within visual line of sight. And so the evidence that's generated through phase 0 projects is going to be very different from the evidence that's generated around a phase 3 project, which is more so a large-scale, countrywide, multi-year drone operation. So now I am going to turn it over to Susie so that she can give you a demo of the MD3. Let me stop sharing my screen, Susie, and over to you.
Thanks, Gabo. Gabo, can you confirm that you can see my screen as expected?
I can.
Great, thanks. So I wanted to show all of you the medical drone delivery database website. You can see it's housed right here on the updog.org platform. And when you open here, you can see the geographic map, and you can see several different filters here that you can choose from. There's a link to learn more about how to submit your data, to download the data set in Excel, and to learn more about how to collect and submit data if that's of interest to you as well. What I want to do now is to take us through a couple examples of how you might use the MD3 online, as well as the Excel version of the database. First example here is if you were an implementer who has completed their phase 0 or phase 1 implementation, and I'm talking about the phases that Gabo just presented there, where phase 0 is a technology demonstration, phase 1 is small scale operations for feasibility testing. And so if you'd completed one of these and you were interested in scaling up, you could use the MD3 to explore longer term operations. So measuring effectiveness or expanding impact phased operation. And the way you could find these within the MD3 is here in the filter, just selecting both of those phases and then clicking View Results. If you scroll down, you can see the geographic location of those results here. And you can also see the list of each of those different implementations that's included in the MD3. We can find out more about a particular implementation by clicking on Learn More. And here you'll see an easy to access summary of the results and the evidence generated by that implementation. Of course, you see the title for the project, you see some summary of the drone technology which was used and its capabilities, as well as the specific evidence generated through that implementation. Some key facts such as the total number of successful flights, the average flight distance achieved, as well as reference to any findings shared by the implementer and any related project phases included in the MD3 if you want to see, for example, prior phases of work related to this project. An important part that you see on this detailed page is the contact person to find out more information about this project. So this is one example of how one might use the MD3 to look at, to learn more about other phases of work. We can go back to the main page to continue searching by clicking on Return to MD3 there. Another example is if you were a drone implementer and you wanted to research potential new markets or new partnerships to expand your work. So you wanted to learn about what is currently happening in a couple different countries globally. So let's say that you were interested in Madagascar, Mozambique, and Nepal. You could search by using the country filter here, and then you would click View Results. And again, you can see the geographic location of those projects. And if you click on one of the location buttons, you can see a quick summary of that project. You can also see, as I showed you before, the full list of those projects down here at the bottom. Again, I can click on Learn More to see the detailed information about this project. And I can see the drone technology, a summary of the evidence generated. And here the implementer has included a report. And so if I click on this, I can easily access the report that the implementer has provided. And if I want more information, I just contact the contact person listed for this implementation. And as I said before, there are a few different reasons why you might want to search online here. You can access this information for each of these different implementations online. You can also access all of the database entries in Excel. You just click here where it says download the full data set, and you'll see the same data included in Excel. You can see that there are 3 main tabs here along the bottom. One of these has all of the phase 0 and phase 1 entries. One of these has all of the phase 2 and phase 3 entries. And one of them consolidates the specifications for each of the technologies used in those phases. So one way in which the Excel version may be of particular use is if you were a government who had been approached by a drone company and you would like to see where else in the world they have operated and what evidence they have shared in order to prepare for a meeting, for example. You could do that by filtering the drone supplier in this technology database. And so one example is Swoop Arrow. So if I filter for the results from Swoop, I can see the general specifications of their drone model. And I can also see which entries in the MD3 have used this model. And so, for example, 111, 112, 113, 23, those that start with a 1 prefix will be on the first tab. Those that start with a 2 prefix will be on the second tab here. And so if I wanted to learn more about their implementations, I could find 111, 112, and 113 here. I can see their contact email and the same information, which is presented online, just here in a slightly different format, depending on which is easier for you to access or which you are more comfortable with. Another example of the utility of this Excel version of the MD3 is if you are an academic or an implementer and you might be interested in evaluating or measuring the cost of drones. And you could use this database to identify other implementers who have already evaluated the cost of drones, to connect with them and also to see how they have presented their methodology and their results through the references they shared through the MD3. So you could do this by filtering here the question about whether cost was evaluated. You would click yes, and you can see that there are 5 implementations listed here. So you could visit each of these websites here to learn more about how each of these actors have evaluated costs associated with using drones. And then for more information, just as on the web page, you could come here and look at each of their contact emails to learn more. So that's a quick example of the usefulness of the online version as well as the Excel version of the MD3. I hope you can see that there is a lot of valuable information here, and that we really can achieve a lot of different objectives through this data by accessing this data. And you can see here on this slide the summary of all that is contained in the MD3. At present, we have 30 entries included, representing 41,466 one-way flights in total. The geographic representation, the majority represent implementations in East Africa, but also a strong number from Europe and from Latin America. The most commonly used technology type is fixed wing vertical takeoff and landing, but there are also multi-rotor and fixed wing implementations included. The average speed of the technology is 88 kilometers per hour. Medium payload is 1.5 kilograms, and the typical distance traveled across all 30 of those entries is 33 kilometers. An important fact is that 63% of the entries have complete data, which means that every field is filled. And for the most part, I would say of those that do not have entirely complete data, there are just 1 or 2 fields requested, which are not included. So really, we have been very grateful to those contributing for the transparency and sharing of their data. And as I mentioned on the website, you can see more information about how to submit your own data and the type of data which is requested by clicking on the Submit Your Data piece on the header, or you can email info@updog.org. And then on the right side of the header, you can see Learn how to collect and submit your data. That will take you to the UAS Evidence Generation Toolkit. And if you want more information about that, I've provided my email as well for further information or for technical assistance around its use. And so now I'll turn it back over to Gabo to talk about the future of the MD3.
Thank you, Susie. That was a great demo. And I hope that you all are just as excited about this online and Excel version of the utility as we are. we've been very happy with how it has turned out so far in the results that we have and the feedback that we've heard from folks. So let me, so Susie, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, so really, where do we go from here next? And what is the future of the MD3? Well, our main goal is to get more submissions so that the data can reflect the entire Drones for Health landscape that's out there. And we really would love your help in incentivizing maybe those that you work with or other drone operators that you're involved with to share their data, other governments, other implementers as well. We will be accepting new submissions on a rolling basis. And like Susie said, you can either submit your data online or you can email us if you'd like to schedule an interview to submit your data. We're also looking to integrate more KPIs and more fields that would be of use to you. So we've already slated a few more for our next release, which should be in about 6 to 9 months. But we'd also really like to hear from you as you're using the database to tell us what else would be useful, what would be helpful, and to hear how you're using the data. And finally, we're going to update the data biannually. So we'll send out requests to those that are in the database for updates. And so if you'd like to be notified about future updates, you can just join our UpDog listserv, which most of you probably are already on. Okay, and we can go to the next slide, Susie. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions that are already in the chat that I will share. So one from Neil is that, does the database contain detailed geographic maps by project? So for the example from Nepal, there are flights in the greater Kathmandu, Chitwan, and Pokhara area. Not right now, but that's a really good suggestion that we could consider integrating in the future. So thank you for that. And then we have one from Eric. Is there a way to sort by the farthest distance instead of average drone trips or payload capacity in a range that might meet a potential user needs? Yes, definitely. If you use the Excel version of the database, you can sort all of those columns and you can sort by furthest or shortest distance, payload capacity, etc. So great question. Online version, there is not a way right now. In Lebeau, yes, the presentation will be available after this. We will email you. And then any other questions? If anyone wants to come off mute, you can feel free to make yourself heard, or any comments.
Hi, Gabor, Robert here. Just saying excellent work. Just remember you're asking for the database. Yeah, excellent work, honestly. Really impressive.
Robert, sorry, it's quite difficult to hear you.
I'm just saying really impressive. I remember when you were starting this, you and Susie starting this off, and I'm just saying it's really, really impressive to see. Can't wait how
thank
far
you so
it will
much.
look going forward. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. We really appreciate the positive feedback.
Yeah.
Any other initial questions? If not, we have a couple of discussion questions to maybe prompt you. So yeah, we're like I mentioned, we're really interested in trying to make this database really suit all of your needs and the people that will be using it and people that are making decisions on the future of drone operations. So we would love to incorporate your feedback as we are updating the database and we're doing our new releases. So I'd love to hear from you all some of your initial impressions. If you see yourself using this data, maybe how you see yourself using this data, what else might be helpful to be included, like the maps, for example, which is a great suggestion. Anything else from your initial reactions?
Hello, this is Timothy Reuter from the World Economic Forum. And thank you very much for pulling this together. I guess I have a question and a suggestion. I'll actually start with a suggestion, which is, one of the things that I think is missing from this database, and generally has been missing from a lot of the discussions, is anything about health results. Sort of, I think what decision makers really need to know is, how does this compare to alternatives? And in some ways, I know that sort of harder data to collect. The drone operators are usually not the owners of that data, and so can't necessarily give it to you. But in an ideal world, I think that is what would be most useful for pushing the field forward. And then my question is, do you have an instinct about what percentage of total global operations this actually represents? Are we seeing most of what's going on, or is this a pretty small subset? And obviously you can't know everything that hasn't already been told to you, but if you have a gut reaction on that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. My gut reaction is that we probably have about 50% of operations, and we have almost all of the large scale operations that are out there. There's one that we're kind of finalizing right now from Malawi and getting the data in. So once we have that, I'm 99% sure that we have all kind of phase 2 and phase 3 operations that have happened around the globe. Actually, I'm going to revise that. We don't have operations from like Switzerland, which was quite a large operation in the US, kind of the Wake Forest operation. So nearly all. But for kind of the smaller scale, and especially around kind of the technology demonstrations, I'm a little less confident. I would say we probably have around 50%, just because there is so much going on out there and it's changing all the time. But that's kind of our job, is we're trying to chase down as much data as we can and incentivize the operators to submit. And so that'll be our ongoing project. And then Susie, I would love maybe if you want to mention about the health outcomes, because that's some work that you've been working on, and maybe mention the evidence generation toolkit.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important question, and the evidence generation toolkit and the MD3 complement each other. There is space in the MD3 to highlight any results achieved or measured through each implementation, and for each implementer to share their references or reports which they would like to make public. As we move forward, we hope that we can also encourage actors to share their methods as completely as necessary for others to replicate their methods, and to learn from any challenges that they saw. And so part of the mission of the evidence generation toolkit, which we've released the first version of and are updating this year, is to help provide some of those methods and sample toolkits, sample indicators, tools, which we and partners are testing in the field and can share with others to help generate more evidence and more standardized and comparable evidence, which can then be shared in future iterations of the MD3. So I think we certainly share that goal of trying to really demonstrate what is the health impact of these drone implementations, particularly once you get to the longer term operations.
Thanks, Susie. And yeah, I think that last point you made around the health impact really only being measurable in longer term operations is really key. And that's kind of why we have divided the different indicators per the maturity of operations. Health impact from a technical side, and that's where Susie comes to help us here. That is her area of expertise, is hard to demonstrate until you have longer sustained operations. So we're hoping that as we get more, that more others will be able to share that information that they're collecting. We're at time, but I'll just see if there's any other final comment from anyone before we close out. Okay, and if not, I will thank you all so much for joining, and I hope that you use the MD3 and find it useful. If you have any other feedback in the future, we would really love to hear from you. You can contact us through info@updog.org. Our contact information is on the website, and we would love to learn from you and your experiences, and hope that we can tailor the database to suit your needs. So thank you, Susie, and thank you everyone for joining today. Take care and bye-bye.